Alright, in this video, I want to continue my little, videos. Well, I've only done one so far in Husserl's Cartesian Meditations. Um, I did the first meditation, and I'm going to basically discuss the second one. Um, Pretty much, the whole thing is about this thing called transcendental phenomenology. He's kind of looking at it from a transcendental kind of look now, and I'm going to explain what that all entails. In the first one, it was talking about, establishing a genuine science via the epoche and throwing out the science that was of the natural attitude and such. And in this one, the second meditation is called the field of transcendental experience laid open in respect of its universal structures. So he's talking about doing a certain kind of phenomenology and studying it a certain way and doing things as this new transcendental way, and which is different from his ideas and different from his logical investigations. So first up, we have the 12th section, and to do transcendental phenomenology, or to lay open the field of transcendental experience, is to lay open the infinite realm on a infinite realm of a being of a new kind. So, is to study universal logical structures, and I say logical because in the logical investigations, thus the prolegomena through logic, as well as his experience and judgment, he talks about how, in this talking about what comes in pure givenness and talking about what is given to us phenomenologically, he does talk about how things are pretty much laid out, as universal structures, or as universal logical structures. So he looks at, he does have a bit of like a phenomenological metaphysics of, the logical. It's almost like a metaphysics of logic, in that it's a metaphysics of the logical structures that are shown, that are given to us, or the way that we see things have these logical universal structures in them. Now, his experience and judgment, as well as his prolegomena to pure logic, in his which is his preface to the logical investigations. So he wants to put into philosophical use this the transcendental ego. Now, the ego, of course, is the stream of consciousness. This stream of consciousness of where things are given to us, and he wants to study that phenomenologically. So, the transcendental ego underlies the basis of experience. So, the way in which we have experience is this ego. It's the way that we understand experience, this stream of consciousness of the way in which things are given to us. We want a deepest grounding of science. Thus, in the same thing he was talking about in the first meditation, is to ground it with this kind of new kind of study, and not in the old kind of study. Thus, the natural attitude, or even the older forms of, the different kinds of phenomenology. He's doing it in this transcendental way. Not that the other kinds of phenomenology are bad, but this is just a newer way, and he's almost in this text, almost leaning towards, well, he's leaning towards, going from static, this text is like half static phenomenology and half genetic, because at the end of this meditation, he does talk about constitution, which is related to Genesis, in that we're, the whole thing of the genetic phenomenology. I do have a video talking about the difference between static and genetic phenomenology. The difference there is static phenomenology talks about things like the eidos, or the essences, intentionality, noesis, noema, and hyale, stuff like that. Studying things as they are given to us, empirically and causally, while genetic phenomenology is talking about constitution or genesis as to how it got there, how we get this givenness, talking about things as to the way in which it got there, thus the um, it's talking about where it all came from, almost grounding the static part. So we want to abandon the objective world or abandon objective cognition. Now he says that in one instance, and then comes later to talk about transcendental intersubjectivity or transcendental objectivity. Now I'm going to explain why these two sentences talking about objectivity are different. So this ego cogito, you don't use it as a ground of a genuine science. You don't use transcendental. You try to use that as your ground. The epoche lays open this infinite realm of being, this field of transcendental experience. If I can find that quote. Let's see. What was that? Okay, here we go. The idea of it as transcendental grounding, and indeed, instead of attempting to use ego cogito as an apodictically evident premise for argument supposedly implying a transcendent subjectivity, we shall direct our attention to the fact that phenomenological epoche lays open to me, the mediating philosopher, on infinite realm of being of a new kind, as the sphere of a new kind of experience, transcendental experience. When we take it into consideration that for each kind of actual experience, for each universal varying modes, there's corresponding pure fantasy on as-if experience with parallel modes of perception, as-if retention, as-if recollection, etc. So that's what he's doing here. So he's talking about what this transcendental experience is and how we study it. The ego is apodictic evidence for oneself and not for transcendental experience. But so we have the cogito, which is the thought, and then he introduces two things here: the cogitation, which is the cogitation is pretty much a thought. Like the ego cogito or the cogito is that experiential kind of thought, but the cogitation is more so of a thought. Universal apodictically experienceable structures of the ego. Did I got number 13 yet? Well, I have it written down that I'm trying to tell myself to read stuff, but never mind. So that's what he's doing here. He's trying to study things via this field of transcendental experience. So the 13th section, which is about, of course, transcendental phenomenology, we have two stages going on. The first stage is the realm accessible to transcendental self-experience must be explored. So we're trying to explore this infinite realm of a new kind of being here. And the second stage is thus the criticism of such. So, and it's almost a negative phenomenon. It's a negative phenomenological science, and that's it's a criticism, and that's also as part of how we get to that genetic phenomenology. Absolute subjective science, whose thematic object exists whether or not the world exists. Now that is a way to explain phenomenology itself. Science. We have also what he calls a phenomenological egology. The study of the ego, the egology. Science posits the ego. They're in this noetico-nomadic context, and it's studying the stream of consciousness that is common to everybody. So we're studying phenomenology through this egology. Now, it seems solipsistic. It does. Because, the reason being that he's almost trying to do a study of what only one person experiences. Solipsism is a thought process or a philosophy which means that you only what you experience is really the only real thing, or that what you experience doesn't really have any relation to anything else. But for Husserl here, he says it's only seems solipsistic, but it gives a transcendental intersubjectivity. Now, phenomenology can seem like it's like Husserl's phenomenology can seem like it's solipsistic, or it can seem like it's a little bit subjective and yet objective, because the epoche or the reductions, what they do is they don't choose pure subjectivity or pure objectivity. They study was given to one, and that's it. So, in a way, there is transcendental idealism, okay, while yet when he's studying phenomenological egology, and thus we can have a transcendental intersubjectivity. That is a way in which we can have an objectivity or a phenomenological objectivity. So we can have phenomenological idealism, or as well as at the same time almost having a pure phenomenological objectivity. So that's how that whole thing works. I think that's pretty interesting. Now, in section 13, I think he does give a pretty good way of understanding how we only can, or how we can study phenomenology and yet, in a way be on the fence between realism and idealism. He kind of does explain well how phenomenology really is, and how one studies the world, and one studies this infinite realm of a new kind of being through that. And I think he does explain what phenomenology is itself in section 13. So number 14, section 14, the stream of cogitations, or the cogito and the cogitatum. So first of all, what is evidence? I talked about that in the last video. I need to make a video where I'm just talking about the evidence. Thus, that's a feeling of agreement when you're experiencing something. That you experience something and that it's correct, or it's agreeable. Now, I did a better explanation back when I did a video on the first meditation. So he actually has in the first meditation, he does have a really nice little way of talking about phenomenological evidence, which kind of does help to understand it. So, what is this transcendental ego? It is a manifold of cogitations, and he does give a considerable page or page and a half or so against saying that this is a descriptive phenomenology. Transcendental phenomenology is not descriptive psychology. It's not describing things psychologically, but it's doing things through that phenomenological egology, and through what this transcendental ego does give to one, studying the thoughts themselves, and not trying to give a psychologistic description. So what is a cogitatum? So we have the cogito, the cogitation, and then the cogitatum. The cogitatum is mainly it's that each cogito, or each thought process, means something or other, or that it bears in itself. It's intentional in that the cogitatum is mostly when one has, a certain cogitation, there is a meaning or something that it has. It's intended towards something. There's an intentional kind of thing going on here. There's an intentional element with a cogitatum, and thus with transcendental phenomenology, of course. Every thought or every cogito or every cogitation has a cogitatum in that there's some kind of thing that it intends or that it's meaning towards. And that's kind of what that is. And this whole meditation, I'm going to try to put this whole thing in sort of some kind of context, so that everything I'm explaining doesn't sound like just a bunch of, multiple things that don't connect. So, I'm omitting talking about sections 15 through 17. They talk about he talks about there things like natural reflection and different kinds of reflection. He also does talk about the phenomenology of internal time consciousness, which needs to be read, because I've read this a lot and I've read that. But I think if you want to learn more about intentional time consciousness, his book Phenomenology of Internal Time Consciousness is better for that. I have that over there, and I wish I would have brought that with me when I did this. But he's mostly talking about, in 15 through 17, different kinds of modes of consciousness. Different ways in which we can be conscious. So in section 18. He talks about identification and synthesis. So, in the video that I did, which was about the difference between static and genetic phenomenology, he doesn't talk about active versus passive synthesis. He just talks about synthesis here. Passive synthesis has to do with the principle of association. Synthesis as in a unity of experience or a unity of consciousness. That's what synthesis is. So if you're actively being conscious of something, there's things that via synthesis that brings all those things together. While if you're passively conscious, or there's a principle of association attached to that. So synthesis is identification in that it's connectedness of conscious things, of things that you are conscious of. If we consider the fundamental form of synthesis, namely identification, we encounter it first of all as an all-ruling, passively flowing synthesis in the form of a continuous consciousness of internal time. So he's talking about different modes of consciousness via that time and other different modes. So in a way, it's talking about how everything is connected, everything is a unity in one different kind of consciousness. How it's, it's almost how we have the Noesis and the noema, which are very well-known concepts, which I've discussed. Then we have the Hyle, which is constraining or background experiences, which brings the whole thing together. Synthesis is identification in that it's a unity, it's a connectedness, how it's all brought together in one kind of way in which things that are given to us are presented via that. And that's in a way how it can be objective, how it can be different from us and objective in that it's of its own unity. And through this, he does talk about time consciousness and modes of consciousness and a multiplicity of intentionality. So we can have many different ways in which we can be intentionally conscious of things. So, section 19, about actuality and potentiality of intentional life. First of all, we know that actuality is actually happening, it's actually occurring, while potentiality is the possibility of something occurring, or thus actually being conscious of something, or potentially being conscious of something. Every actuality involves its potentiality, so real possibilities, actualizable by the ego. Or gives the concept of a horizon of reference of subjective processes. We have internal reference to the potentialities of the ego. So this horizon of reference is the in a way it's like Heidegger's projection. How, you know, the subjective processes is this horizon of reference is referring to what the ego could possibly be doing, or could possibly be conscious of, things that it could possibly be intentionally conscious of. So, and this has he talks about the concept of a protension, which is in his book, The Phenomenology of Internal Time Consciousness. A protension, is where we have this time continuum, and pretty much we have the imminent temporal objects, which is as they come into your view or as they are given to you, they are that line of imminent temporal objects. Thus, when this comes to my view, this is a imminent temporal object. But then when it's gone, I still have some kind of memory or recollection or retention of it. So that's the past memories of it. Regress down into further past continuums, and that's various different kinds of past, different past possibles of way you could think of something that was in the past, or was given to you in the past. While protension is things you anticipate to be given to you, or anticipate to see, or anticipate to happen to you. So protension is related to potentiality in that. The horizon of reference by the ego is looking at his pre-delineated possibilities, so we can explicate those and unfold those and look at those. That's another thing that that's what transcendental phenomenology does. Horizon of reference is also an unintentional thing. So section 20, the peculiar nature of intentional analysis, where we it's a constant unfolding of potentialities. In analyzing intentional consciousness, we are unfolding lots of different potentialities. We are explicating and elucidating and unfolding, and we are looking at new modes of consciousness and not just data. So, in actualities of consciousness, we have in their potentialities of consciousness. So this is all things that Transcendental Phenomenology studies and looks at. Now the 21st section, which is the Transcendental clue, the intentional object hints at on infinity, or a multiplicity of cogitations, or tons and tons of other possible things that you could possibly have given to you. Now this is almost like, Bertrand Russell. Now, he wants to, Russell was kind of thinking about how, if I see something, does that, or if I can see something, or if I can verify something, does that mean, or if I can know something to be true, does that mean that I can know that I can know other things, or does that mean that I can know that there's a external world if I see some certain things, or does having one thing given to you mean other things can be given to you? There is a noematic structure of consciousness here. So, when what transcendental phenomenology does is studying things as they are intentional and as they are actualities and potentialities, and via this noetical, noematic, and also hyletic structure. Now, this transcendental clue, it's looking at objects of possible consciousnesses. Now, section 22, which I won't get into too much, talks about the constitutional problem of consciousness, or of transcendental phenomenology. Now, the third meditation, which I will do in a different video, does get into the issues of constitution and such. So, to put all this in a bit of a summary, what he's talking about here, you know, things like phenomenological egology, you know, the first stage and second stage of transcendental phenomenology, this negative phenomenological thing, looking at things via evidence and trying to gain evidence of things, synthesis, connectedness, you know, actual potentiality, horizons of reference, the transcendental clue, and all these different things. He's describing what the business of transcendental phenomenology is. He's talking about what we explicate, what we elucidate, what we study in this, and what a science of this would be like. So, if you think I've messed something up or left something out that I should have included, I did omit 3 sections of this meditation because I felt like I wanted to, you know, leave that for you to read, because I think that's wasn't too important to the main thing I wanted to be discussing here. But if you have any questions, or if you think I should, you know, make this, if you think I should have included more, or if you have a question, just please comment below, because whenever you comment, I get an email, and if your comment is constructive, then I will always respond. So, thank you.